Almost 40 miles west off the shores of Puerto Rico and almost halfway to the Dominican Republic lies a place called the Mona Islands. In the early spring of 2022, we sailed on a dive liveaboard called the Juliet with a group of friends, spending several days in the open seas to explore this rarely visited place and discover the reefs below. What we found was an untouched world where we were among a small few to have ever experienced this place. Outside of our boat, which travels to the Mona Islands a few times a year, no other operator travels to these waters, making these islands pretty much inaccessible to all but a few divers each year. The diving under here was all about the collective diversity of life, from the hawksbill turtle we found at 100 foot of depth just hanging out at the bottom of the Monito Islands, to the very curious nurse shark that met us in Desecheo as soon as we hit the water and stayed with us throughout the majority of the dive. Having the chance to spend time with each of these creatures felt special, and it was particularly fun to have a chance to do all of this diving with our small group of 8 friends, who all shared a similar passion for diving. One of those 8 friends included, you guessed it, Michelle, bringing back her classic diving buoyancy skills. Wow, look at that buoyancy. Some of our other diving buddies included Michael, who could go through a swim-through better than anyone else I've ever seen, Luke, who helped coordinate the event and has been diving more places than I could ever imagine, and Nicholas, who can take the smoothest underwater shots I've ever seen. So if you take a look at this video and you see unusually smooth shots, those are probably Nicholas's. Thanks for letting me borrow those. And then for me, one of the best highlights for me over the course of this trip was on certain dives, when you listen just right, way off in the distance, you could hear the call of whales singing to each other. And that just really made for some really special dives. I'll tell you, the diving was great, but a big part of what defined this entire trip for me was the boat itself. The Juliet and our journey on this constantly rocking waves here, also known as the Mona roll, were just something else. Like most liveaboards, we never set foot on land, and for almost a full week, eating, sleeping, and diving off the same boat all day, every day. The boat's manned by a small crew of about 5 and a cat named Rico, who is definitely not afraid of the waves. The waves were not only a thing above deck either. When you were in the water, they could make for some pretty intense exits at the end of dives, where you really had to keep your focus. In particularly challenging conditions, we would swim over to a rope on the side of the boat, pull ourselves along, and climb up a ladder hanging onto the side of the boat. When the waves were rough, you'd have a pretty spicy ladder swinging several feet in the water while you worked to grab it. So yes, even getting out of the water here could be an adventure. Looking back at these clips, the underwater clips look way more badass than the ones above. The ones above, you just look like you're getting up off of a ladder. And let me tell you, you felt way cooler than these clips make it look. Whew. Now with the editing I'm doing here, I could make it seem like living on this boat is non-stop magic. I mean, check out these dolphins. So cool. But the truth is the waves could be rough. The Mona roll was real here, and more than a few of us had a time with the never-ending Mona roll, including Michelle.
Michelle, wave. Nice. Demonstrating the rocking of the boat.
I will say, one of the most exciting, adventurous, and best dives we got to do in this trip was off an island called Monito. Off the coast of the larger Mona Islands, these waves in particular could get pretty gnarly during the crossing between the two. But being basically a deep rock in the middle of nowhere, this spot was a great location for sea life to aggregate because there's basically nothing around. But because of the waves and the lack of protection, Monito requires some pretty precise entry coordination for the boat and a negative entry for the divers to avoid getting run into the rocky edges of the island. Once the boat was lined up and the divers were ready to go, we jumped one by one into the water and immediately descended 80 feet to the calmer depths below. And now, as I take my plunge into the depths, I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, Monito Island. So there you have it, the Mona Islands. Definitely an adventurous trip, both above the water and below the water. So during my safety stop, I think this is where I'll leave you. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
All right.